Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is Abdul Malik Mujahid. Thank you so much for joining us. I know this program is designed for the West Coast. And 11 a.m. people are still, on a Sunday morning getting up. So those of you who are on time, congratulations. You are ahead of others. As you know that Sound Vision has been working on Save Uyghur campaign for a while. The largest concentration camps since the Nazis are found in the Uyghur land established by China, who occupies that land. And it is committing genocide. We have been using that term for a while. Some people are coming around now, some people saying cultural genocide, this and that. But when you are detaining 3 million people, you're trying to change their brains, you're raping Uyghur women to change the history and of demographics. And when you force medicine on people, and when you take them away thousands of miles away from their land, all of that accounts as a genocide. So today we'll be talking about what is happening there. And to do that with us is a whole lot of people. But before we start, I would request Brother Kaleem Faruqi, who has been a leader of Muslim community in Southern California, long-time educator. He has been principal of weekend schools, and he is our outreach coordination. He takes care of that. May I request Brother Kaleem Faruqi to recite Quran for us, inshallah. If you are on mute, you need to unmute yourself. I'll wait just for a few more seconds before I request somebody else. He is supposed to be, and he just spoke to me. He'll be there. Okay. May I request Brother Taha to recite some Quran for us, inshallah. Okay. It seems that I will be the one reciting Quran. That's source of barakah and guidance, alhamdulillah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله ولتنظر نفس ما قدمت لغد واتقوا الله إن الله خبير بما تعملون ولا تكونوا كالذين نسوا الله فأنساهم أنفسهم أولئك هم الفاسقون لا يستوي أصحاب النار وأصحاب الجنة أصحاب الجنة هم الفائزون صدق الله العلي العظيم وصدقه النبي الكريم ونحن على ذلك من الشاهدين والشاكرين والحمد لله رب العالمين. Sister Adin Anwar is the coordinator of Save Uyghur campaign at Sound Vision. She is Uyghur herself, and she has a personal story as well as story of Eastern Turkestan to share with us. And she has been doing this for a while. Her videos about that has been watched more than 83 million times. So Sister Adin Anwar, welcome, and please share with us.
Jazakallah khair. So before I begin, I usually do this a lot of times when I'm, giving a talk or if I'm presenting about the East Turkestan situation or the Uyghur situation. But essentially, we want to emphasize the fact that this oppression has been ongoing. I think a lot of times when people think about the issue, they think of the last couple of years where people were talking about concentration camps, the 3 million number, or and they're just thinking, okay, this is just crimes against humanity and genocide. But I think a lot of people don't understand like where this has stemmed from, like, well, how did it lead up to this point? And I think a lot of people up to this, just until recently, didn't even know who Uyghur people were. The people of East Turkestan were oftentimes they don't even hear the term East Turkestan. It's just they hear as China's Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region. So there's a lot to unpack there, and I think before I begin some of my own family story, and I think our other speaker, inshallah, Brother Dulkun Isa, will also be sharing some of his story as well. I think before that, I'm going to kind of go through just a very quick run through of the history of East Turkestan, because I think that's part of the narrative that's usually always left out. Typically, when I read about the situation online through the media, whatever it may be, people usually completely miss out the colonial part of the whole history. And I think that's so important because people don't understand this is part of an occupation. They think Uyghur people are Chinese ethnic minorities, that we've always been a part of China, that we're, quote, Chinese Muslims. And these are all terms that are really cringeworthy, that don't fit at all with the narrative, and actually hurts our cause in many ways, because when people are advocating for the release of Chinese Muslims, they think we're Chinese Muslim. I'm like, no, you've completely got it wrong. And people are confused because they're like, how are you guys Turkic but then Chinese Muslims? So to kind of give a quick rundown, essentially the people of East Turkestan, which is a region that is very vast. So if you Google East Turkestan itself, you'll see how big of that land is. And so it's right above Tibet. That the people of East Turkestan had been living with centuries of independence for until essentially the Manchu Qing dynasty took over. And so the Manchu Empire invaded East Turkestan, made it its new colony, and throughout this time, the Uyghurs rebelled against Qing rule, and then 1863 were able to break and establish Kashgaria under their leader Yaqub Khan, which is and the Kashgari was then, now is now known as East Turkestan. 2 decades later, the Uyghurs were invaded by the Qing again, and this time the Uyghur homeland was formally incorporated under the Chinese Empire as, quote, Xinjiang, which you may have heard this name a lot when referring to the land. Chinese nationalists overthrew the Manchu Qing dynasty in 1911. So at this point, the Qing dynasty has collapsed, putting East Turkestan under the rule of nationalist China. So the first official Chinese invasion actually took place in 1912 when nationalist China came to power. And during this time, that's also when Uyghurs also carried out numerous rebellions, and were able to establish the first East Turkestan Islamic Republic in 1933. That also got shortly crushed. And then you also have the establishment of the East Turkestan Republic in 1944, which only lasted a period of 5 years, and it was essentially overthrown, or it collapsed due to the Communist Chinese Party coming into power, and also the assistance of the Soviet Union. And so the most recent occupation took place in 1949 when Communist China came to power. This took place basically a year after, for example, Palestine was occupied by Israel. And this is something in history that a lot of people just don't know. And so I urge you all to really, and I'm giving a quick rundown of the most recent history, but we've essentially lived with, so much civilization. We had empires, we had kingdoms, and the whole land of East Turkestan really reflects that. I mean, obviously now everything is being destroyed. The mosques are being destroyed. The history is being destroyed. Who we are as a people are being destroyed. But if people who would visit the land would actually go to East Turkestan, and they'd be like, this is nothing like mainland China. This is not China. Like, I don't understand why this is branded as China, part of China, because it's not. And so people who've gone there, and have really deemed that history. And also, I also forgot to mention, within the Islamic world, it's one of the most prime parts of the Islamic civilization for centuries. And I'd also like to add the fact that Islam was basically the overwhelming religion for the longest time. Um, Hold on one second, just pulling something up. So so they so for the rootedness of Islam, just to give you kind of a comparison of how prominent this religion is, because people don't really think, when a lot of times when people think of Islam, they think of Muslim, they think of the Arab world, they think of maybe Southeast Asia, they think of some parts of Asia, but Central Asia was such a rooted part of this whole of the faith. And it has been the prominent religion among Uyghurs in East Turkestan long before Egypt or even the Levant became majority Muslim societies during the Mamluk era. And so much of the Islamization was actually credited to the Qarakhanids, which were basically a group of Turkic tribes who lived in the Uyghur homeland and converted to Islam in the 10th century, which is basically 4th century Hijri for those who want to kind of think about it through the Islamic calendar. And this was after their ruler Sultan Abdul Karim Abdul Khan entered the religion. So it was through his conversion that basically sparked the Islamization of the rest of Central Asia. So we have, and from there you have we're also really rich with Sufi. The land was really rich with influenced by Sufism, and oftentimes if you go to East Turkestan, there's actually hundreds of Sufi shrines that people have, Uyghurs and other Turkic people have visited, become such a prime mode of people's worship, but now those are unfortunately destroyed. And so this is again a brief rundown. I apologize if certain things are hard to visualize, or maybe it's your first time hearing these things, but I urge you to really look up the history. There's actually a lot of books out there. There's one called The Crossroads of Xinjiang by James Millward that you can look up. It's a book, and he's a professor at Georgetown, historian as well, and you can really if you want to delve into that, you can. So now we've come to the present day, which is obviously you hear concentration camps, prisons, this mass surveillance system that hasn't been seen in any part of the world except there. People describe the whole situation as it's like you're suffocating, but you're not dying. So you're constantly suffocating, but you cannot die. So you're basically like the Walking Dead. And that's how someone described it to me when they were there and they came here recently. They're like, you feel like you can't breathe, because no matter what move you make, you're being scrutinized. There's a threat of you being sent to a camp or a prison, or you're afraid that your son or your daughter is just not going to come home at the end of the day. So these are some things that I remember talking to some Uyghur refugees, and this is how they were describing the current atmosphere of East Turkestan. So essentially what has gone to this point is China has claimed that, East Turkestan is a hub of terrorism. There's Muslims who are very essentially prone to radicalism, and therefore we have to cleanse their minds. We have to make sure that this radicalism is completely erased. And so what we're going to do is just basically re-educate them, essentially forcibly brainwash people, brainwash the Uyghur people, the other Turkic people. When I say other Turkic people, by the way, I'm referring to Kazakhs, Kyrgyz, and the other Turkic people who actually live in the region. I think that's another thing that a lot of people don't know, is they're also being subject to the same form of oppression that Uyghur people are. Hence the term East Turkestan, not Uyghuristan, for example. But essentially, China was like, okay, we're going to put these people in these camps, and basically try to make them become normal people. And these are exact words that the Chinese government has used. And they saying what's interesting is that they use religion. Oftentimes people are saying, obviously they're cracking down on religion, but they were using religion as an excuse. This global war on terror that was launched by the US in 2004. They're using that as an excuse to say, hey, we're going to be part of this campaign to wipe out the Uyghur people. To crack down on Uyghur terrorism, because has been affecting our people. Because there were several I guess occurrences where people have died, and people, and the Chinese government framed that as acts of terrorism, and therefore these people are dangerous people. Oftentimes it's simply people fighting against oppression, and then it's deemed as this massive terrorist attack by the Chinese state. So this is China's response to what they're doing, but I think it's all an excuse. It's their way of essentially trying to wipe out the Uyghur population in a more covert way under the brand of cracking down on Islamic extremism. Throughout the concentration camp started actually in 2016, but government documents that were leaked actually show that Xi Jinping had talked about the construction of these camps in 2013. So that's another report that you can look into. That's also, the media has talked about as well. But the concentration camps started in 2016. It didn't become official news until August of 2018. And now the official number was like over 1 million people in camps, and then there's hundreds of thousands in prisons. But we estimate, as Uyghur diaspora, that the number is much higher. Now apparently we are hearing that a lot of people are actually being transferred from the camps to actual prisons, where they're being sentenced to massive prison sentences, anywhere from 10 to 15 to 20 years to life imprisonment for absolutely no crime at all. So someone could, if they find a Quran recitation on their phone, that person, and there's one Kazakh man who was sentenced 16 years of prison, for example. So these are all one of countless, this is one of countless examples that have taken place. So I'm gonna go kind of shift into my quickly, like my family situation. Alhamdulillah, I was born and raised here, so I have my mom and dad and my direct siblings here, but I have aunts and uncles back home. I have cousins back home. And I actually took an Excel spreadsheet, and I gathered, I sat down with my parents, and I gathered how many relatives we deem as missing, because we have had no contact with them, we cannot contact them, and we don't know their whereabouts or their well-being. And we gathered 93 of those relatives. We put down their names, and we are saying, yeah, these people are deemed as missing. And we also know that many of them are in some form of detention or imprisonment, but the problem is we don't know how many, and we don't know to what extent. Like that, getting those details is so difficult for us. And so this is just, and again, my story is one of millions of stories. Brother Dulkan will probably give some insight into his own family story about his parents' detainment, and his mother, who was sent to a concentration camp and killed. I believe that was, Brother Dulkan, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that is what had happened. May Allah rest her, give her, grant her Jannah, and really, and forgive her sins, and give her this elated rank in her grave in Jannah. So again, this is one of countless stories. I have friends who haven't contacted their parents in multiple years, have not heard their voice. And imagine like living in a day where we pick up our phone almost every second. Like, I'm talking mainly to the young people right now. We pick up our phone, we can't stand without picking up our phone like once every hour at least, right? Imagine living in a day where you can call anyone, but you can't call your own mother or mom or dad. And it's not for like a week, it's not for a month, it's for years. And you're here stressing out because you don't know if your mom or dad has been sent to a prison. You don't know what their state is. And even if you manage to get contact with them, you're not even allowed to talk openly about your situation, about how you're feeling, you're not supposed to ask your mom or dad how they're feeling. You just see it in their face. And so this is just, this is like it's a very different way of feeling oppressed And I think a lot of it's so hard to describe the feeling to people because I don't know of other populations that have to go through this exact type of pain. And also on top of that, then you also have the silence of the Muslim world. You know, I'm talking about also on governmental levels. You see genocide deniers, and just people who are basically trying to justify everything. So everything, all this combined, really just ends up being a tragedy for a lot of us. Becomes mentally, for our mental health, extremely destructive. And I don't even want to talk about like my mental health or other people's mental health here in diaspora. I'm thinking about the mental health of also those who are in concentration camps, being drugged, being separated from their children, being, you know, just subjected to the worst forms of oppression that, again, not much of the world has. I feel like the world isn't doing enough to stop it. Inshallah, I'm going to stop here so we can move on to you know, the rest of this presentation or the rest of this talk. But feel free to ask questions, and I'll be happy to answer those later.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Adin Anwar. Losing or not being able to locate 90 plus relatives of her mother and father's side, I think it's sort of a extraordinary thing. But Adin Anwar has consistently been working on this cause of freedom and justice and peace for her people. Adin Anwar is a coordinator of Save Uyghur campaign at Sound Vision. And she has, her video has been watched by more than 80 million people about what's happening there. Now I'm going to request Brother Dolkan Isa. I mean, it takes an extraordinary person to overcome his own personal things and devote to taking care of a whole lot of other people. Normally, when people have something happen to them in person, they're likely to be absorbed by the pain and worries and things like that. But this is one of those brothers. There could be millions of other people, but this is one of those brothers who decided that he is going to do something to alleviate the suffering of his people. Brother Dolkan Isa is in Germany. He is coming from Germany. He is president of the World Uyghur Congress, who is the umbrella body of all Uyghur people throughout the world. And this is the most important, prominent body of Uyghurs. Of course, there are many other organizations. And his affiliate, Uyghur Human Rights Project in Washington, D.C., is doing tremendous job taking this cause of Uyghur people forward. Thank you so much, Brother Dolkan Isa, for being with us. Truly appreciate that. And please take what we'll have is Brother Dolkan will take about 15-minute presentation, and then we'll have 15-minute question and answers. And then I will share with you that what we are doing and how you could help. And there'll be at the end Q&A also. At that time, you can ask a question to Adin as well. Thank you so much. Bismillah, brother.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, dear brother and sister. I would like to thank you all for joining us, especially I thank Sun Virgin and its director, my dear friends, Imam Malik Mujahid, for inviting me to speak here today. It is encouraging to see you here, saying and hearing your voice. Let us know we are not alone, that the world has not forgotten about the Uyghur Muslim. Uyghur Muslims have been attacked, assaulted, disappeared, arbitrarily arrested, killed by Chinese Communist Authority. Millions of innocent people suffering greatly at the hand of the Chinese Communist regime. But suffering is not new. Uyghur has been suffering for systematically human rights abuse at the hand of the Chinese Communist government since 1949. My sister Aydin Anwar said already quite a lot on this. And as you said, Uyghurs successfully established independent state twice in 20th century. East Turkestan has been military occupied by the Communist Army 1949. After occupation, 1955, Chinese government set up Xinjiang Uyghurs Autonomous Region, so-called Autonomous Region in East Turkestan. But since the past 65 years, Uyghur Muslim has never seen a sign of autonomy. All basic rights, including political, cultural, religious rights, continue violated by the CCP. Chinese government has dramatically increased its repression in Turkestan particularly since September 11. Sister, I didn't already talk on this. Chinese government has used international law on terror and pretext of crackdown for the Uyghur as a people. It was easy for China to label Uyghur as a terrorist because Uyghur happen to be Muslim. Chinese government has launched enormous strike and hard campaign on the Uyghur, has arrested, detained thousands of peaceful Uyghur activists, and has executed hundreds of dissident and religious figures, accused them as a terrorist and a separatist. I personally also victim of this, and Chinese government officially 2003, 15th of December, official issues one terrorist list, included 11 people for Uyghur organization in exile. My name on the number 3 of the terrorist list. So Chinese government puts my name to Interpol Red Notes. 1997, I was suffering 21 years for the Red Notes because of Red Notes. I was detained so many country border. I was refused to enter so many country. But of course, I had never stopped to fight on my right. Finally, 2018 February, Interpol delayed my Red Notes. I have been an activist for the right of the Uyghur Muslim over the 30 years. I started my human rights activism in 1990s, leading students' democracy protests in Turkestan. I have been advocating basic right of the Uyghur people to be respected for almost my entire life, but still share East Turkestan, no, is the worst it has been in my lifetime. Particularly in the past 5 years, we have witnessed strategy of the Chinese government shift to anapologistic cultural assimilation and the social reengineering of the Uyghur people. Everything makes Uyghur people unique or language or religious culture has been targeted. Young generation of the Uyghurs are being targeted particularly for indoctrination. So-called bilingual education program have for years been undermining Uyghur language in school, forcing Uyghur students to use Mandarin Chinese. For too long, Uyghur and other Muslim, and Chinese Christian, Tibetan Buddhists, Falun Gong, other religious believers have suffered gross repression at the hand of the CCP. But as the Uyghur people, as a Muslim, Islam is particularly has been targeted by the Chinese authority. Chinese government tolerate no authorities higher than its own, and the religious belief is seen as a direct threat to the absolute authority of the CCP. For this reason, Chinese government has launched a campaign to control every aspect of the religious practice in Turkestan and erode religious sentiment entirely. Now the Uyghur people have literally not religious freedom and at risk arbitrary detention, torture, and other mistreatment for the religious beliefs. Today, at least more than 3 million innocent Uyghur Kazakh Muslims are being arbitrarily detained in the 21st century concentration camp. China's state is looking up as mass is one of the largest detention of the civilian in the modern human history. All families are suffering, being tortured, dying in the camp. Sister Aiden already saying on my mother's situation, yes, I have left my country in 1994, almost 26 years. I have never seen my family member, father, brother, sister, or parents. I couldn't see anymore because 2018, I got heartbreaking news. My 78 years old mother died in one of the concentration camps. And this year, 2020, January, I got second heartbreaking news. My father, he passed away. But still, I have no idea which condition, where is my father, when even, and where is his cemetery, I have no idea. So, and my whole family was destroyed. My older professor, he was the professor, older brother, mathematics professor. I heard recently he sentenced 17 years, young brothers disappeared since 2016. It is my family institution, but it is just one example. But the entire Uyghur who live in exile and Turkestan have a same situation, even some story worse than my story. We have all witnessed mass collection, personal data from CCTV scanners, facial recognition software, public database, police checkpoints, and the DNA and the blood samples, which are analyzed using artificial intelligence and large data hubs. 100,000 Uyghurs are being subject to modern slavery and the forced labor marketing products for the Western company. Recently, in March 2020, Australian Strategic Policy Institute issues a report. The report said 82,000 Uyghurs detained transport to the other province of China as used for forced laborers. CCP has been trying to greatly diminish or wipe out next generation Uyghurs through mass sterilization of population control measure focused on the Uyghur women. Uyghur Muslims are being subject for this horrific action by the Chinese government because of who we are, because we are born Uyghur and because we are born a Muslim. The concentration camp is just one of the part large campaign to erode religious and ethnic identity and the total assimilated Uyghur people by targeting everything that might make us unique or ethnic identity, cultural, language, and religious. Today, if you visit Turkestan, mosques are empty, surrounded by security cameras. Men are not allowed to grow long beards. Women are not allowed to wear Islamic dress. Traditional Muslim names for Uyghur children have been banned. For example, Muhammad, Ahmed, Aisha, Samad, this all name is forbidden today. Chinese officials have forced Uyghur to break their fasting during the Ramadan. Not only in the forbidden fasting, the Ramadan time, only forced to eat pork, drink beer, or smoking cigarette. Every imam is directly appointed by the CCP. Quran and the prayer mats have been confiscated and burned. Express loyalty to the Xi Jinping and the Chinese Communist Party. Even before the start of school and the class, students must be praying to the Xi Jinping and the CCP, saying this water, this bread given by the Chinese Communist Party, and Xi Jinping thanks for the Chinese Communist Party. Chinese official has described Islam an ideological disasters. It must be eradicated. Chinese government has even made this religious persecution into the law by announcing last year China is launching as a 5 years campaign to Islamization Islam. It may make it compatible with the Chinese culture. What this means is reality is a formalization of the Chinese campaign to erode Islam entirely and deprive the Uyghur of their right to freedom of religions. You would think that such a blanket religious persecution, Islamophobia, and discrimination would cause outrage in the Muslim world. But sadly, Muslim countries and government have largely remained silent. However, we have seen some strong support and solidarity from Muslim civil society around the world. For example, Sun Vision and some other Muslim organizations, students in the United States, Canada, Europe have done so many campaigns to support Uyghur Muslim. For example, 16 April 2019, World Uyghur Congress with Sun Vision cooperated organized a large demonstration in Washington, D.C. Brother Malik Mujahid did play a significant role on this. In the last 2 years, we have been given some reason for hope. Finally, international community seem to be waking up. World Uyghur Congress has done international campaign around the world as much as we can at United Nations, European Parliament, European countries, institutions, different of countries, and other international platform. In the United Nations, we have seen significant progress. In the August 2018 camp were addresses by United Nations body the first time as the UN Third Committee eliminated racial discrimination review of Chinese report, and the High Commissioner for Human Rights Bachelet has called for an independent investigation into the camps. And United Nations Universal Periodic Review November 2018 on China was particularly critical moment. And more than 14 countries first time raised this issue as Chinese government closed the concentration camp. In the US, we have seen significant progress. Important bill Uyghur Human Rights Policy Act into the law July 2020 after President signed. US government has implemented Global Magnitsky Act against Chinese high-level officials and sanctioned more than 50 Chinese companies and the CCP institution in East Turkestan. European Union has also been increasingly active on this issue, and a reasonable, strong resolution was passed in European Parliament October 4, 2018 and 19 December 2019. Civil society have looked at the action, Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, and some other international organizations like Muslim organizations like Sun Vision and the World Uyghur Congress jointly organized several campaigns, organized press conference in Geneva to call Human Rights Council, adopt resolution to send fact-finding mission to Turkestan. But China is a member of the Human Rights Council, and China has blocked it with cooperate with other countries. So we are arriving at the crossroads of human history that we will determine course or future will take. How the international community responsible to the situation like this will play a big part in determining for the futures. That's why we need your support. That's why we need all humanity support. When the leaders of the Muslim world refuse to act or speak out for the Uyghur Muslim people, we rely on the people like you. We urge you not to let the Uyghur Muslims suffer in silence. Uyghurs need hope that they have not been forgotten. Hope that there are people that are willing to rise of cause and demand justice and accountability. When most of the leaders of the world have stood by and watched as our people have suffered and died, we need ordinary citizen, human rights activists, and particularly Ummah to hold this leader accountable and demand they take action. Thank you for your attention.
Well, thank you so much. Jazakallahu khaira, Brother Dolkanisa. Brother Dolkanisa has a life of a struggle. He not only struggled for Uyghur people for 30 years, but he also tried to struggle for democracy. He was one of the student leaders. If anybody remembers Teneman Esquire, if you were born at that time, he was among the leaders of that movement, and currently he's presiding the World Uyghur Congress, which is an ally who organization leads the effort for Uyghur, and we are part of the supportive. So we'll take question and answers at the end with a little change in the plan. So one of the things we need to remember is this is the election time. Politicians are trying to talk to you. They cannot knock the door because of the pandemic, but they're willing to come on Zoom. So, and the people who are present at this moment, my request to you will be contact your congressperson and your senator, arrange 50, 100 people. 50 people, 100 people are good enough number of people, and they are willing to talk to that sizes. Closer to election, that will not be possible. Right now, it is possible that you gather 50 people, 100 people. If you have difficulty getting hold of your congressperson, we can help you. So politics is hard. Politicians are talking, and we need to influence them on the Uyghur issue. Second thing I'd like to share with you is that the way it is being done in the presidential politics right now, President Trump is attacking Vice President Biden on being weak on China. So China is going to be in discussion for the next 3 months until the election time. So each time they talk China, we need to talk Uyghur. Each time they talk about trade with China, we need to talk about human rights. One of our demands, we have been talking with them consistently, that in all trade negotiations with China, there need to be a human right expert who is fully aware of what is going on in their concentration camps on the table. So that discussion about human right and trade cannot be separated. Because if you separate this, China wins, because all they are about is money. And once they negotiate, whether they lose little or gain little, they will go for it. Our cause is that right when you're discussing trade, you must discuss what China is doing to Uyghur people. This is number one point. Second point, in the vocabulary we need to have, the largest concentration camp since the Nazis. Each time we talk about it, we must say largest concentration camp since the Nazis. And China has been very oppressive force. I personally have been to that area. I have seen from my own eyes. I have taken so many photographs that in those days, there were no digital cameras. So I ran out of film, literally. And I couldn't find film in the Urumqi and the other areas of Xinjiang or Eastern Turkestan. I have documented how masjid have been destroyed in that land. And when I'm talking to people, one person, while he was talking to me, he was arrested by police right then and there. All he was telling me close to a masjid that, in those days were little opening, they were allowing people who were, not who were very old people. They were allowing few of those people first or the second time to go on Hajj. That young person was saying they're allowing only their own people, very old people. I have tried, I have spent 2 weeks in Beijing, but they didn't allow me to go. While he was telling me, right at that time, they came and grabbed him right there and dragged him. In the van, that van, when its siren comes, people all around go silent because it's like a death van. China has these vans that they put the person there, nobody comes alive out of that. And people suddenly, the whole neighborhood, people around go silent, complete silent when those type of things happening. And China has been doing to all Muslim. If you take just the Chinese figure, forget about what the victim of the Uyghur Muslim or Tibetan people are saying or the Chinese Muslims are saying. Just take the Chinese government figure. This is the only country in the world, if Chou Enlai in 1952 was correct, is standing in Bandung city in Indonesia, that we have 50 million people in whole China, not just Uyghur people. You know what they're saying now? They're saying they have about, I think, 23 million people. How come in 70 years, Muslim population and half? So if population growth rate of China will be applied to all Muslims in China and the occupied Eastern Turkestan, there will be more than 200 million people. That will be probably one of the second or the third largest population of Muslim, just the Chinese growth rate applied to it, despite all their policies, whatever is the official. So this has been very oppressive policies. Unfortunately, people are not fully aware of that. So this is one thing. One major reason people don't fully understand what is going on is the educational aspect. This is where San Vision, Uyghur campaign, Uyghur Congress is focused, and an Islamic scholar in the Middle East who is well respected wrote something very naive and ignorant. And Aden, who is right there, she wrote a response in the English language, then another staff of Sound Vision translated in the Arabic language. We provided that answer. So we are focused on educational aspect of it. And when people think, oh, they are saying this and that, brothers and sisters, this is truth, which you're hearing. What China is saying is propaganda. And Muslims in the Muslim world, unfortunately, because they are seeing everything between China and America, America being oppressive, and China is coming up as a superpower, they're thinking in a big geopolitical scenario and want to be supportive of China and don't want to speak about China or expect aid from China. You know, hiding the truth. God Almighty has a whole lot to say about that. So coming back to America, I would say politics is important. Politicians are talking, and Chinese issue is going to be reverberating throughout the campaign. So anytime they talk China, you need to talk Uyghur. Anytime they talk about China, we need to talk about the largest concentration camps in the Nazi. So we need to keep this up. And for that reason, there is a report about what Google is doing in terms of aiding the concentration camp and all that. And Uyghur, along with some Google engineers, have developed, and Aden is working on it. We'll be issuing a report on that, that not only the companies whose list has been issued, that they are involved in the concentration camps and oppressing Chinese, oppressing Uyghur Muslim, working with Chinese, and so that will be coming out. But in September, in alliance with the Uyghur Human Rights Project, and Sound Vision together and Justice for All will be coming out a report of what is happening to Islamic scholars and masjid. 5,000 masjid have been destroyed. And it is going on for a while. I took photos. I told you that I have photos of a destruction. I mean, a minaret which will be, say, 6, 7 feet wide minaret, 12 feet if you take the whole thing, circumference, and destroyed completely. I have documentation. I personally documented. This is not fiction. This is not America going after China. China has been doing these things. My neighbor in Pakistan, we used to call him Haji Turkestani. You know, Muslim may not know word Uyghur, they know word Turkestani. And why he came? He came in my childhood because of oppression from Eastern Turkestan. He was a refugee to my neighborhood, a beautiful human being. I always have fond memories of him. So China will remain in the news, and we need to keep working on media. So second thing I like you to do, first thing was that politician, gather 50 to 100 people, get politician to come and talk to you on Zoom, and what you need to talk, we will provide you the talking points. You can email to Aden, aden@soundvision.com, or you can go on info@justiceforall or some other place, and we will provide you what are the talking points. How to write a letter to invite them, we'll provide you that. Third thing, what are the things once you are done in conversation, it's called leave behind letter. So their staff has the information what they need to run with. We'll provide you that also. So this is one thing. Second thing is media will be talking about China as soon as Trump attacks Biden on China issue, Biden attacks him on some other issue. There is a room for conversation. So media, I mean, newspaper, this morning I was checking in New York Times, Washington Post, and mainstream media, they always have comment section. And in that comment section, debate takes place. And that's where we need to interfere, start educating people, because people who are writing those comments, they're educated people, they are into the media, they're opinion makers, they're influencers. So we need to insert our information there. Next thing which I like to say that one of our demand is going to be that, and we have spoken to Biden campaign. Actually, in the first place, Biden stopped in New Hampshire. Our friend, brother, Subhanallah, it's from Boston. He himself, Brother Zahir Adil, he himself asked him a question about Uyghur directly with Biden, and he was supportive. Nancy Pelosi, so some people are concerned, Trump administration is taking a hard line towards China. He doesn't care for human rights, but to force China is using this particular one. This needs to be emphasized, and we have been speaking to the Biden campaigns and Nancy Pelosi. I was present there. She's fully committed for the right of Uyghur people very strongly. So we don't have to worry about it. But, politicians are politicians unless there is a pressure. So we need to continuously ask that whenever trade with China is discussed, there need to be Uyghur human rights expert present there. So these are the things which I wanted to share with you. And just in July 23rd, through End Uyghur Forced Labor Coalition, Justice for All and 180 other organizations are part of it. We have demanded that apparel brand to end complicity in forced labor in Eastern Turkestan. A lot of your clothes, I make sure when I buy any of these things, where it is made. If it is made in America, there is a 30% of all our clothing is coming from China. So we need to watch out for that. 80% of all clothing from China is through the forced labor from Eastern Turkestan. A recent Associated Press report confirmed what we have been saying all along, that it's a genocide, that they're physically destroying people. It's not moral and cultural, they're physically destroying. Sister Mehrgul Tursen, who is one of the only two people who were in concentration camp, she says people are given medicine. They're forced to take medicine, women, and they either stop bleeding, meaning period-wise bleeding, or they profusely bleed and they die. Sister Mehrgul Tursen is in the media that she's a young lady, not even 30, and she cannot bear children anymore because of that forced medicine that they're giving. Then they're forcing Chinese men and Uyghur sisters. What is the purpose of it? Change them, racially speaking. So this is a pure genocide which is taking place. So we are committed to World Human Rights, World Uyghur Congress. We are committed to Uyghur Human Rights Project. And in terms of fund and moral support, we have calling campaigns, and we're taking a stand on these things. Are you standing with us? That's the question. So if you have any questions or messages, you can use the chat box or Q&A, and we will just read those questions, and Brother Dulkin Isa and other people will be able to respond to you. So I have a chat box open, but if you have anything in Q&A, you can put there. So one of the questions which was already answered, I think, is what can be done by laity. I responded to you that type your questions, please. Whoever has question, write it down. What you could do is gather 50, 60 people, and we will help you. And invite congressperson and senator, and talk to them about that. And these are the issues which you need to talk to them about. And so there is another question. So SaveUyghur.org is the place, a campaign, or you can go justiceforall.org, and you will have more information, inshallah. So we're looking for any other questions. Otherwise, we'll, you can also support our work by donating. You can go on SaveUyghur.org and push the donate button. And we appreciate that. It is because of your support we are able to support Uyghur campaign, which we have, educational campaign, our advocacy, as well as support the Uyghur organizations like Uyghur Human Rights Project, as well as World Uyghur Congress. Well, since there is no questions, we will just conclude in a half a minute by dua. But before that, I'd like to thank all of you for joining us. I would like to thank Brother Dolkan Isa for your leadership, your persistence, your sabr, and your hope from God Almighty, and your hope for the Muslim Ummah and the world leadership to understand and stand up for this cause. And thank you, Aydin. Congratulations once again. You're recently married, but we keep bringing you to continue to support. You have been, mashallah, blessed to have 83 million people watch to you. We're looking for a couple of 100 million people now to add to that. Thank you so much. May God bless all of you. Stay healthy, stay strong. When you're out, use your mask, but keep making dua. God Almighty is telling us, human being, to behave, seek forgiveness from God individually and for our collective sense, and tell the world what type of operation is taking place in the world. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.